Now I know what you're thinking. Hey Vic, are you doing another episode of Clint's Comics? Are those shelves bare because he's setting up some new books? Well, okay, well, since Clint just answered the first question, I'm going to answer, the last question, I'm going to answer the first question by saying, yeah, buddy! Welcome to this week's edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host, Victor Nunley, and I am the Comic Hero. Alright, it's Mardi Gras season, y'all, and there's some parades going on. There have already been some parades here in Louisiana that have already occurred. This weekend on Saturday is going to be the Crew of Janus Parade. And guess what the theme is, y'all? Superheroes. Yeah, how about that? But in observance to the Mardi Gras season, I've made this this Mardi Gras Comic Hero shirt. I want y'all to take a good look at it. Here's the front of it. I mean, it's green, and then it has the colors purple and gold. And then on the back, there's the main Comic Hero logo, and right behind it, a fleur-de-lis. Now, this is one of 3 shirts that I'm going to be wearing, and the other 2 shirts are, well, purple and gold. And I'm going to be wearing those 2 in the next 2 episodes, including the milestone episode 50. I tell you, I've already begun planning for that one. All right. Now, there's a segment that I haven't done in a few episodes. That segment is only 2 words. I can't really think of the 2 words. Or it's not Victor Rants, because I don't do that segment anymore. Any questions? Questions I walk around in. Questions I didn't questions. All right. First off, before I begin, I want to thank everyone who submitted their questions, whether it was by text or on Facebook. And I will read all 8 of those questions, and I will answer all 8 of those questions on this episode. All right. The first one is from Jacob Shelby from Bloomington, Indiana, and who also went to college with at ULM. Jacob asks, which comic book hero has inspired you the most in life, and why? Well, Jacob, the answer to that question, it's who you think, and it's someone else. You see, it's Superman and Captain America. Now look, when I mean Captain America, I don't mean Bucky, I don't mean U.S. Agent, and I don't mean the current Captain America, Sam Wilson. I mean Steve Rogers, the true Captain America. And the reason both of them inspire me is because, now I've always been taught right from wrong, and wrong from right. But it's just something about Superman and Captain America. I mean, they always prided themselves on doing the right thing, and that's what I do. I mean, my parents always prided themselves on raising me to do the right thing as well. But these 2, reading them and studying them and the kind of people they are in their respective books, that's just an added incentive. So it's Superman and Captain America, mainly because because Superman, one thing about him, he's always been the superhero Boy Scout. I mean, he doesn't kill. He beats up folks. Believe me, he has. But he will not kill. Although I'm still mad at Zack Snyder for Man of Steel. He ought to be ashamed of himself, because Superman doesn't kill. I don't know how many times I have to say that. And then Captain America, I mean, he is a soldier, a military guy he may be. But he always prided himself in doing the right thing. He's not one of those folks that, I mean, he may be a military guy, but he doesn't curse, he doesn't drink, he doesn't do any of that stuff. And so those two are who I base my life on. All right, now 2 people that I know asked the same question, but they worded it differently. All right. These 2 people are Katie Beach from Sarepta, Louisiana, who I used to work with at another job, and then Naderica Adams from Homer, Louisiana, who is an old school buddy of mine. And those questions are, okay, Katie asked, what makes you like comics so much, and how did you get into reading them? And then Naderica asks, where did you get your initial interest when it came to the comic book world? I'm going to go ahead and kill two birds with one stone. When I was young, probably about, from about 3 until I was maybe 6 years old, my Aunt Brenda used to babysit me during the summer. And she would have, and over her house, she would have these huge stacks of comics. And now the kind of comics they were mainly Harvey comics. In other words, for some of the characters that appeared in Harvey comics are Baby Huey, Lil Audrey, Lil Lulu, Casper the Friendly Ghost. And I was always so, I was always so amazed by the artwork in there. Now at that point, I couldn't really read that well, and she would let me read them, and I was like, "Holy cow! This artwork is amazing. This is better than anything I watch on TV." And as I got older, I started reading comics, and then I ended up started reading Superman. That was one of the first ones I ever picked up, and then, but I never really took care of them back then. And so I gave that up for a while and started delving into the trading card world. And it was cool. Now back in the 90s, it was cool to collect trading cards back then. And I did, but then one day during my sophomore year of high school, I just didn't want to do it anymore. It just got bored because there are only two things you can do with trading cards: trade them and look at them. You can't really do much. So I decided to get back into comics. Because one thing about comics is that if you read them once and then put them up, you can always read them again. And at that point, I was pretty much one of the best readers of my graduating class. I mean, I think I was the first person in my class to pronounce Czechoslovakia, by the way. And that was when I was 10 years old and in 4th grade. But ever since my sophomore year of high school, which was 1997, 1998, I just got into the story arcs, and I love reading the artwork. I think everyone's artwork is great, but artwork isn't really artwork unless there are words inside speech balloons. And so but to answer your question, I really credit my Aunt Brenda for my love of comics. So Aunt Brenda, if you're watching this, I love you, and I thank you so much for babysitting me and letting me read some of those comics. All right, next question is from Kayla Sheremy from Shreveport, Louisiana. She asks, who is the first hero to be featured in a comic? Kayla, that is a question I think everyone ought to know. Superman. He made his debut in Action Comics #1 back in 1938, and then after that, a whole bunch of other superheroes from throughout the DC and the Marvel Universe. I mean, Superman was the first superhero, and because he was a superhero, that set the tone for other superheroes to be created by other writers and artists. So it was Superman. All right, next question is from another school buddy of mine from Homer, Chad Blackwell. He asks, best comic book you own? Chad, I was gonna ask you to be a little specific, but I thought about it, and the best comic book I own in terms of a series that I'm reading right now would probably have to be The Amazing Spider-Man. I love what's going on in that book. It's Peter Parker pretty much trying to rebuild all the bridges that not Norman Osborn, but Otto Octavius had burnt while he was masquerading as Spider-Man for almost a year. And so it was Spider-Man. I mean, Amazing Spider-Man. But to answer your question, in terms of one one issue of a certain book, it would be Spider-Man again. This time it would be the Superior Spider-Man number 30. Now that is the issue where Otto Octavius, who was inside of Peter Parker's body, had finally came to all my English teachers, I'm sorry about that, who had come to the conclusion that Peter Parker was the better Spider-Man because, I mean, Otto Octavius, he did things, he did things, but he did them in his own way. I mean, he actually killed super villains, but that didn't really bode well for the Avengers or any other Marvel superhero, with the exception of Deadpool, because Deadpool kills anyway. But then in this issue, he realizes that he found out that Peter Parker that a sliver of Peter Parker was still inside Peter Parker's brain. That he didn't exactly get rid of him like he thought he did. And then he said, "You know what? You're the true Spider-Man. Let me die. I don't deserve to live. Goodbye." And so that was really a wake-up call, and that was also a last will and testament of Otto Octavius, because now he only lives inside of a virtual reality program, and his body, by the way, died in the Amazing Spider-Man number 700 in the previous series. Okay, now Jake Young from Springfield, Missouri, who I went to college with during my days at Louisiana Tech, he asked, "What non-superhero comics did you read?" Now, Jake, I asked you to be specific, but then I thought about it. I do read a non-superhero book, and the name of and that book is Star Wars, and that's the current volume that's written by Jason Aaron and with artwork by John Cassidy. I've always considered Star Wars to be the whole Star Wars mythos to be a battle between good and evil. But I'd never consider Luke Skywalker and the rest of the Rebel Alliance to be superheroes in anything. So that answers the question, Star Wars. All right, and another school buddy of mine, Brian Ferguson from Homer, had asked, "Could Wolverine's claws, not the bone claws, pierce Superman's skin?" Yeah, they could, if Superman was under a red sun. You see, Superman has two weaknesses. Well, actually has three weaknesses. Kryptonite, a red sun, and magic. And let's say, for example, if Superman was under a red sun, Wolverine could. But if he was under a yellow sun, Wolverine would be in some pain because his claws would end up broken. So yeah, if he was under a red sun, or if he was bombarded by green kryptonite. So yeah, Wolverine could break through Superman's skin if it were under those two instances. All right, and the last one from one of my coworkers at my job, Susie Beck from West Monroe. She had asked, "What about the hero theme for this Saturday's Mardi Gras parade?" I just mentioned that in the opening segment. I'm going to go ahead and repeat it again. The theme for this year's Crew of Janus Parade here in Monroe, in West Monroe, is superheroes. I don't know exactly what floats are going to be around, or who's going to be masquerading as who. I mean, I may wear a superhero T-shirt on Saturday. All right. Once again, I want to thank you all for your questions, and folks, if you have any more questions that you want to ask, if these people who just asked me questions, if you have any questions you want to ask, please let me know. And if you're watching this and if you have any questions, please let me know. All right, that's it for any questions. Now here comes Clint's favorite segment, or one of his favorite segments in the show, and that's Comically Speaking. So without further ado, let's talk comics! All right, I'm only going to talk about one book, and that's Superman. I just got caught up reading it, and there is a story arc that's going on that's written by Jeff Johns and art by the awesome John Romita Jr. and it's called The Supermen of Tomorrow. And this one actually talks about this new superhero that Superman meets called Ulysses. And he has powers that are similar to Superman, but from a moral standpoint, he's he would fare as a member of a certain Wildstorm book that used to come out called The Authority because he killed people. And Superman was like, no, do not do that. And then one day Ulysses was looking around and he figured, okay, I don't like all the bad things that are happening in this world. So he goes off and he creates this this inhabitable planet, and he invites everyone on Earth to board on this ship so they can come to this planet, because he said on this planet you won't have to worry about famine, you won't have to worry about starvation, you won't have to worry about disease, you won't have to worry about any of that stuff. And this doesn't really sit well with Superman. And so he finds out that Ulysses isn't really a superhero. He was actually sent by this alien race. Oh, by the way, see, Ulysses. One thing about him, he's a genetically engineered human being. He's not an alien like Superman. He was kind of led to believe he's an alien. And then he locks Superman up in a kryptonite laced lock or something. It tells him, "I'm sorry, I can't let you stop me from doing this." But then he comes to his senses, frees Superman, and then all of a sudden, all where breaks loose. And Superman number 38 just came out last week. Oh, and by the way, I just want to apologize to everyone who was expecting me to do episode 48 last week. Had some work-related stuff that kind of got in the way that I couldn't avoid. But hey, I'm here. The series is still going on, so fight on, as they say at the University of Southern California. All right, that's it for Comically Speaking. So, let's get to the comics I bought this week.
Comic books I bought this week.
Up first is Flash number 38. Now, what's been going on in this book is Barry Allen, the New 52 version of the Flash, is stuck inside the Speed Force with no way out, and he finds out that the Speed Force, the part of the Speed Force that he's stuck in, well, it's pretty much pretty much mirrors that of a third world country. And meanwhile, back in the present day, the Flash from 20 years from now decides to go around and fight crime the way he does, by killing people and torturing them, which the Flash does not do. Come on, DC characters don't do that stuff, and there's a lot of Marvel characters that don't do this stuff either. All right, up next is Thor number 4. Now, this is Thor versus Thor. And one of the things that's actually going on in this book is the current Thor, the female Thor, goes up against Malekith the Accursed, which is one of the Frost Giants. And while she's going up against him, Thor comes back. He says, "I want my hammer back, and I want it back now." But back at the end of Original Sin number 8, we find out that Thor isn't exactly found out that he's no longer worthy of wielding Mjolnir. But I don't think he cares. He just wants his hammer back. So as Michael Buffer would say, let's get ready to rumble! All right, up next is Superman number 38. Now this is the conclusion to the Supermen of Tomorrow story arc, and it's Superman versus Ulysses. And at the end of number 37, we find out that that Ulysses thinks Superman lied to him about everything, and he's pretty much brainwashed by this other alien race or whatever they are, and he tries to fight him. So let's get ready to rumble. This is also the conclusion to the opening story arc that's done by writer Jeff Johns and artist John Romita Jr. Oh, and before I go on with this next book, there was something that I read on this Facebook site called Comic Book Nerds Are Hot, and they were criticizing the cover of the regular cover of Superman number 38. By the way, this is a Flash 75th anniversary variant cover that I have. Well, the cover, it's pretty much Superman and Ulysses fighting each other, but a lot of folks are criticizing John Romita Jr.'s artwork. Look, I'm just going to go ahead and say it like this. John Romita Jr. has been doing comics since the late 70s, early 80s. And his father, John Sr., is a living legend. You have to get credit where credit's due. You know, there were a lot of disrespectful comments that I saw on there. I didn't comment at all because real recognizes real. Dude, or dudettes, or folks, don't criticize a comic book artist that's been around for over 3 decades. What's wrong with you people? Art is art. Shut up. Or better yet, let's see you try to do something a lot better. And then we'll talk. All right, sorry folks. All right, up next is Avengers number 41. This is a prelude issue that leads up into the Secret Wars miniseries that Marvel is coming out with later on this year. And as you can see, these aren't the mainstream Avengers. These are actually the Ultimates from Marvel's Ultimate line of books. And this lets you know that they're going to be part of Secret Wars. It's not just going to be the regular Marvel Universe. It's going to be the Ultimate Marvel line as well. And I cannot wait to read that. All right, up next is Action Comics number 39. Action Comics number 39. This is a continuing story of Superman. Well, the conclusion of Superman trying to fight off these creepy bad guys that ended up plaguing his hometown of Smallville, and in the last issues we find out some other things about Superman's past, in terms of the New 52 Superman, and not really the Superman we know. Oh, and by the way, in the month of February, DC is going to be celebrating Harley Quinn, and this is one of a few variant covers that DC is doing this month. And lastly, Star Wars number 2. This is the second issue of the current Star Wars series that just launched it from Marvel last month. And let me tell you, by the way, let me do a comically speaking in segment, if you will. I read the first issue, and let me tell you, it was almost like watching a Star Wars movie. Jason Aaron and John Cassidy did not disappoint. I thought, man, I don't know whether I don't know whether I was reading a comic or watching a Star Wars movie. But these guys together in a Star Wars book, magical. Magical. I am just so overjoyed by the work that these two guys have done in the first issue. All right, that's 7 I bought, which brings the total number of comics that I bought since December of 1997 to 6,654. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I want to apologize for not doing an episode last week. It was some work-related stuff, but y'all probably don't care as long. I'm quite sure that y'all don't care as long as I do an episode. So this episode, this series is gonna. I have this vision. I have this vision that there's going to be a whole bunch of folks that are going to be doing. They're going to be coming here and being a part of it. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, not per se, but I know that it's going to happen. And join me. And then next week, if I have anything to say about it, I will be back here. So if you're watching this, if you're a ULM student, or if you live here in the West Monroe area, come on out and be a part of it. And I'll try to come exactly when I say. You see, when I do this web series, usually hinges on what my work schedule looks like. So, yeah. All right. I'm Victor Nunley. I'm the comic hero. I'm going to go ahead and pay for these books. See you next time. Till then, be safe, be blessed, be a hero, and laissez le bon temps rouler, y'all. Aye.
Great show, man.
Oh, yeah, it's always good. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey Vic, are you doing another episode of Clint's Comics? Is this going to be yet another great episode? Well, I'll answer those questions by saying, yeah, buddy! Welcome to this week's edition of the Comic Hero Show. I'm your host, Victor Nunley, and I am the Comic Hero. Alright, it is Mardi Gras season, ladies and gentlemen, and okay, I got to do that again because I don't want the camera to be up this high. I know what you're thinking. Hey Vic, is this going to be another great episode of the Comic Hero?